I always believed marriage was built on love, trust, and mutual effort. That's the mindset I had when I married Grace 7 years ago. I knew I wasn't flawless, but I was devoted. I worked hard, made sure the bills were always paid, and constantly placed her needs before mine. For a while that felt enough. But over time things shifted. At first it was so subtle I brushed it off. It started with small changes. Grace no longer greeted me when I walked through the door. She stopped sending those little texts during the day that once made me feel connected. I convinced myself she was just exhausted, maybe overworked. But even when we were home together, it felt like I was invisible. She rarely looked my way, barely spoke to me. Evenings that used to be filled with laughter and conversation turned into her sitting silently, scrolling on her phone, or retreating to bed early. The closeness we once shared vanished, like a flame snuffed out in the wind. I tried to stay patient. I kept asking, "Is everything okay?" But her reply never changed. "I'm fine," delivered flatly without lifting her eyes from the screen. Still, I could feel the truth gnawing at me. Things weren't fine and neither was our marriage. Slowly, a pattern emerged. If I didn't initiate, nothing happened. If I didn't text first, the silence lingered. If I didn't reach for her, there was no affection. If I didn't plan dates, there were none. I told myself it was stress, just a rough season, but deep down I knew better. People prioritize what they care about. And I wasn't on her list anymore. Whenever I suggested doing something together, hoping to rekindle what we lost, there was always an excuse. "I'm too tired. I have a headache. Maybe another time." But another time never came. One Friday, I decided to surprise her. I left work early, picked up the ingredients for her favorite dinner. Pasta with homemade sauce, garlic bread, and a bottle of wine. I set the table, dimmed the lights, and lit candles the way I used to when we were newly married. I waited, hoping this night would feel different. Grace came home around 7. She dropped her bag on a chair and barely acknowledged me. "Hey," she mumbled. I forced a smile, trying to keep the atmosphere warm, and gestured toward the table. Her eyes flickered over the meal, but her face didn't soften. No smile, no gratitude. "I already ate," she said, slipping off her shoes. My chest tightened. "You already ate?" I asked, my voice low. "Yeah, grab something with the girls after work," she replied casually before collapsing onto the couch, pulling out her phone as if I wasn't even in the room. I sat across from her, silently begging for her to notice my disappointment, to at least acknowledge the effort. But she didn't. She just kept scrolling, her face lit by the glow of the screen, detached and distant. Finally, I spoke. "Grace," I said softly. She didn't glance up. "Are we okay?" She sighed, annoyed, like I was burdening her. "Justin, why do you keep asking me that?" "Because we don't talk anymore," I answered. "Because you don't even look at me the way you used to." She rolled her eyes. "I'm just tired. Not everything has to be some big issue." I wanted so badly to believe her, to accept that she was simply exhausted. But deep inside I knew this wasn't fatigue, it was indifference. I tried to bury that truth, telling myself every marriage goes through rough patches. I convinced myself she'd come back around. But the reality was harsh. I was living with a stranger. She wasn't my wife anymore, not the woman I married. She was just someone sharing a house with me, treating me like background noise. Then came the night everything unraveled. We had dinner, or rather I did. Grace pushed her food around, more interested in her phone than the plate in front of her. Afterward, I cleaned up alone. What once felt like our rituals now felt like chores. When I returned to the living room, she was curled up on the couch, eyes glued to her screen, expression blank. I stood there, watching her, a weight pressing against my chest. "Enough." I sat beside her. "Grace, we need to talk." She didn't look up. "About what?" "About us. About this distance between us." She sighed and finally set her phone down, not angry, not even concerned, just bored. "Justin, I don't know what you expect from me." My jaw clenched. "I want my wife back." She gave a mocking scoff, folding her arms. "I haven't gone anywhere." I exhaled slowly, struggling to stay calm. "Then why does it feel like I'm married to a ghost? We haven't been close in months. You barely touch me. You hardly speak to me. You don't even seem like you want to be in the same room with me. She rolled her eyes again. I told you I'm tired. Can't you just accept that? Tired? I echoed. That's all I ever hear. You're always tired. But what I see is you making excuses to avoid being near me. She shook her head, irritated. Oh, so now you know how I feel? Well, if I want to, I will. And if I don't, then I won't. Simple as that. And then she said it. The words that cut deeper than anything before. What I do with my body is none of your business. The sentence hit me like a physical blow. I froze, unable to process. What? I whispered. She leaned back into the couch, arms still crossed, her tone flat and detached. Just because we're married doesn't mean I owe you anything. Something inside me cracked wide open. I had been asking for nothing more than the bare essentials. I didn't know what direction to take after that moment, but I could feel everything shifting inside me. I had been holding on, asking for so little in return, just closeness, just kindness. But Grace never seemed to understand that this wasn't out of duty. It was out of love. I wanted to stay connected to the woman I had married. She gave a hollow laugh, brushing me off as though I was being theatrical. Not everything revolves around you, Justin, she said, her voice like ice. A heavy silence filled the space between us, suffocating. And right then I knew. I was the only one still clinging on. That was the moment I let go. I stared at her, the woman I once loved, the woman I had built my life around. But all I saw was someone who had emotionally left long before this conversation. For months, I had pleaded for her affection, made excuses for her distance, convinced myself that if I just tried harder, she would return to me. But the truth finally hit. She was already gone. She had only been waiting for me to catch up. Something shifted inside me, as though a weight had finally lifted. I wasn't furious. I wasn't shattered. I wasn't even sad. I was simply done. I stood up, and Grace frowned. What does that mean? She asked. I pulled on my jacket calmly. It means I hear you. Loud and clear. She let out a dry, amused laugh. So what, you're leaving? I didn't shout. I didn't try to make it dramatic. I just walked out. And for the first time in years, I felt free. That night, I checked into a hotel. I didn't have a plan, didn't know where else to go. My hands trembled as I handed my credit card to the front desk clerk. My mind was spinning with the weight of everything that had just happened. Sitting on the stiff bed, staring at the blank wall, I waited for some kind of emotional wave, grief, rage, regret. But all that came was exhaustion. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting anymore. I thought about texting Grace, expecting at least a message from her. But hours passed. Then a day. Then another. Nothing. That silence told me I had made the right choice. She wasn't panicked, wasn't broken, wasn't even curious where I was. She was too used to me always chasing her, always coming back. But not this time. A week later, her first message arrived. Are you really leaving over this? Grow up. I stared at those words, reading them again and again, waiting to feel something. But there was nothing. That silence inside me was all I needed. The next day, I filed for divorce. At first, she brushed it off, thinking I was bluffing, that I was trying to scare her into changing. But when the official papers landed in her hands, reality hit her hard. That's when the calls and late-night voicemails began. Her voice was drenched in tears, begging me to stop, promising to change. Justin, please. I didn't mean it. We can fix this. You can't just throw it away. But she was wrong. I hadn't thrown anything away. She had a long time ago. I had given her every chance to make things right when it still mattered. Love isn't about what you say. It's about what you do. And her actions had shown me the truth. I wasn't her partner anymore. Just someone she had gotten used to. Someone she thought would always stay no matter what. So I let go. Slowly, I started piecing myself back together. Some nights were difficult. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for my phone, tempted by old habits. But then I remembered the way she had looked at me that night on the couch, cold, detached, telling me my feelings didn't matter. You don't say that to someone you love. You say it when you've already stopped caring. A few months later, the divorce was finalized. Signing those papers felt surreal. I expected regret, maybe grief. But sliding the documents across the table, setting my pen down, all I felt was relief. I was free. With that chapter closed, I began to rebuild. I poured myself into work, spent more time with friends, and picked up old hobbies I had abandoned during our marriage. That's when I met Maria. Maria was everything Grace had never been. Where Grace had been distant, Maria was present. Where Grace was indifferent, Maria made me feel seen. We met by chance, and before long, we were spending more and more time together. Our conversations grew into dates, and those dates blossomed into something I hadn't felt in years: happiness. For the first time in forever, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Then one evening, Grace appeared. It was just after 8 p.m. when I heard the knock. I hesitated before opening the door, expecting a neighbor or a forgotten delivery. But when I opened it, there she was. Grace. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes swollen and red, like she had been crying for hours. She seemed smaller somehow, stripped of the effortless confidence she once carried. "Justin," she whispered. Behind me, Maria stood in the living room, looking toward the door. Grace's gaze shifted to her, then back to me. Her face twisted with anger. "Who the hell is she?" I exhaled heavily, already tired of it. "This is Maria. My girlfriend." Grace's mouth opened, then closed, before a bitter laugh escaped her. "Wow. You really moved on that fast. Grace, why are you here?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. She ran her hands through her hair, her anger melting into something rawer. "I tried dating," she admitted. "I tried moving on, but nothing worked. And now I realize, it was always you. It was always supposed to be you." I swallowed, feeling pity mixed with frustration, but no love. That had died the night she told me my feelings meant nothing. "It's too late, Grace," I said evenly. "I begged you to care when it mattered. I fought for us and you didn't. Now you want to come back, because you're lonely. Because the dating didn't work out." Her face hardened with rage. "I can't believe you're doing this to me, after everything we've been through." "No, Grace," I replied firmly. "After everything I've been through." She stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. "You think she's different," she sneered. "She'll leave you too, just like I did. Just like they all do." But Maria didn't flinch. She simply slipped her hand into mine, standing steady beside me. Grace's expression crumbled. She had expected the old Justin, the one who forgave, who waited, who stayed. But that man was gone. "We're done, Grace," I said firmly. "Don't come back." She lingered a moment, her lips parting as if to argue. But then she turned and walked away. I closed the door, locking it behind her. Maria squeezed my hand gently. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I turned toward her, and for the first time in a long time I smiled. "Yeah," I said.